The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Today on Aging Horizons, we'll be speaking with Carl Rustin, who's the Suicide Prevention Coordinator for the state of Montana. We're going to be talking about suicide on a national level and a Montana level. We're going to be talking about resources, how you can find help when you need it, and how you can find help for your family and community members. And we're also going to be talking about the COVID-19 impact on suicide in Montana and nationally. So make sure you stay tuned to Aging Horizons.
With as many as 1 in 10 Americans at risk for Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia, chances are someone you know and love will receive that diagnosis. When that happens, you may well feel devastated, but know that you are not alone. Help is available. You don't have to face dementia by yourself. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, 800-272-3900, for guidance and support.
It's been 27 years. I never thought I'd still be smoking, but here I am, COPD and all. I'm about to have a granddaughter. There's so much to show her, but I'm scared I won't be able to keep up like I used to. I kind of gave up on myself on quitting, but it's different now. I want to be here for her and for my daughter.
When I stopped showing up, Jim showed up at my door. He took me to the hospital in town to get me help. That's the day Jim saved my life.
Everyone has a role to play in preventing suicide. Know the signs and don't be afraid to speak up. If someone you know is in crisis or emotional distress, the only wrong thing to say is nothing at all. Call 800-273-TALK or text MT to 741-741.
Every generation produces heroes, men and women who step forward to defend our country in time of need, no matter the personal cost to themselves. And though we can never fully repay them, we can make sure they have access to low-cost, long-term care when they need it. That's what Montana's Veterans Homes are all about. If you've got a hero in need in your family, call us. We can help.
Welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host, Katie Lovell, and today we're speaking with Carl Rustin, who's the Suicide Prevention Coordinator for the state of Montana. Carl, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Katie, for having me.
I think suicide is one of those topics that nobody wants to talk about, but is such an important topic. And can you just give us an overview of suicide nationally and where Montana rates?
Sure, and then that very reason why people don't want to talk about is why it's such a problem. That's one of the things we're really trying to address, is make this a topic that people can talk about.
Absolutely.
Well, what we know nationally is that suicide's on the rise. We're currently at a 50-year high in suicides. Each year we're jumping nationally about 1.5% to 2%. What that equates out to is about 48,000 people die by suicide each year. Wow. It's now the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. and is definitely, and it's starting to affect more of our younger people, and that's definitely a major issue. In Montana, it's been a major issue for more than 100 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we are usually in the top 5. We've been in the top 5 for suicide for more than 40 years. Each year in Montana, we lose about 300 people to suicide each year, which gives us one of the highest rates in the country.
That's amazing, and just tragic because that's so many families and community members that are impacted every year. Why is Montana consistently in that top 3, top 5?
Well, it's not just, if you take a look at the top 10 states for suicide, a majority of them are in the Rocky Mountain region. So it's not Montana, it's our region. But we have a number of issues, and one of the things I understand about suicide, it's a multi-factored issue. Sure. And when we take a look at the Rocky Mountain region, we have a perfect storm as far as all those things happening at the same time. We have isolation. We're a rural state, sure. About 6 people per square mile. We have socioeconomic. We have access to lethal means, of course. We live in a gun culture. We have major issues with alcohol. Sure. That's often associated. We have a lack of behavioral health. One of the biggest things that we have is stigma, and that goes with that cowboy up mentality that we have in the Rocky Mountain region, where we don't like to talk about our problems, we don't ask for help. And that's one of the things that's really hurting people. We also have issues like elevation. We know that there's a positive correlation between altitude and suicide. And so when you put all those things together, even we're a northern state, which means we get less sunshine, less vitamin D.
Sure.
Vitamin D deficiencies are correlated with depression. So there's a number of factors that are all happening at the same time that really make our region, and especially Montana, very, very high risk.
Absolutely. And have we been pretty steadily in that top 3, top 5, or are we seeing any sort of decline or increase lately?
It's pretty consistent. We saw a small drop this year. For the first time in about 12 years, we dropped out of the top 3. We were number 4, but that's more or less because of one of the states, New Mexico, this year had a especially bad year.
Sure.
But if you take a look at it, it deviates 1 or 2 places, and that's about it. But it stays pretty consistent for years and years. It's the Rocky Mountain region.
And when we look at suicide as a problem, who are the people who are committing suicide in the largest numbers?
Well, that's another piece that makes the Rocky Mountain region of interest, is that our highest risk populations for suicide nationally are veterans, American Indians, and middle-aged white men.
Sure.
We have an abundance of all of those in Montana.
Yeah.
Montana's number 2 in the nation in vets, adult vets. About 10% of our population. We have a large American Indian population, large urban Indian population, and we definitely have plenty of middle-aged white guys.
Sure.
Montana's 90% Caucasian.
Yeah.
So we have the population that's at highest risk also.
Absolutely. And then there are some additional high-risk groups, seniors, people who are LGBTQ. And
LGBTQ for sure, and definitely our young people,
Sure.
Especially, it's nationally, suicide is the second leading cause of death for a young person, 15 to 24. In Montana, it's the number 1 cause of death. So it's definitely something that affects our school-age kids as well, and our young adults.
And I think there are a lot of stories about kids really young committing suicide or being successful in a suicide attempt, and that's
we've had some. There's been a big rise in kids under the age of 14. Last year in the United States, the highest or the youngest was an 8-year-old, but we've had 2 10-year-olds in the last year, and a couple 11, 12-year-olds. So it's definitely something that's affecting our population as well.
Absolutely. And have you seen resources, news coverage? Is that been getting better? Is that helping the talks around suicide?
I think it does. I think the more that we are able to talk about it and raise the awareness, the more it's going to reduce that stigma and let people know that's something that's okay to talk about. Because that's something that's traditionally, there's often, the people that are at the highest risk are people that feel like they're a sense of a burden. And many times people feel they're a burden when they have an issue like depression or anxiety, and they feel like it's a weakness, or they're holding their families back. And we need to start to challenge that perception, and for people to realize that this is both anxiety and depression is something that's very treatable, and that really encouraging people to work with their primary care providers on getting treatment.
Getting the preventative treatment, things that we can really start to consider as preventative treatment, just taking care of your mental health.
Absolutely.
That's really, really good. And I know that Montana and nationally we're doing a really good job about making sure that there are more and more resources available for people. And I want to make sure that we get really into those when we come back. But there are so many more resources available now, I think probably even than 5-10 years ago.
Absolutely, and we're striving to find more and more, and we really rely on ones that have been shown to be efficient and effective.
And I think communities are really starting to see this as a public health crisis, where it wasn't necessarily considered that.
Absolutely.
But has been for many years.
Yes.
Okay. Carl, when we get back, I want to talk about some of the warning signs and then also some of those resources where people can go to look for help for themselves or for their community members.
Absolutely.
So make sure you stay tuned because you're not going to want to miss that.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
Summer in Montana is a great time to visit your local farmer's market. Enjoy the social atmosphere while shopping for a wide variety of fresh, locally grown produce. Together with both WIC and Senior Farmers Market nutrition programs, you help feed your family 5 or more daily servings of fruits and vegetables for better health. You also help local ag producers and enhance the state's economy. So, for summer fun that's nutritious and helps Montana's economy, shop at your local farmers market.
Sergeant Jones. Please respond. I was separated from my squad. Requesting backup. Anyone? Please respond. I'm all alone here.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare summary notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we're speaking with Carl Rustin, who is the Suicide Prevention Coordinator for the state of Montana. Carl, I want to talk about what are some of the warning signs for someone who is contemplating attempting suicide.
So one of the things we want to emphasize is that it's a change in how they're acting. So none of these by themselves necessarily mean that the person's at risk, but when they're not acting like they usually do. One of the first things we notice is that they start to express ideations. In other words, they start to communicate an intent of dying. And very seldom do they say it directly, and that's many times has to do with the stigma. They're much more likely to make an indirect statement like, I can't take the pain anymore, everybody'd be better off without me, I'm just holding everybody back. They may do it in social media or writing. So Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, they start to express themes of morbidity. There's often a change in their pattern of substance use, and this is a big factor from about age 15 to 65, where they either start to use a substance where they never used it before, or more and more of it. They start to withdraw, they start to pull away from their family, they stop hanging out with friends, they start to isolate, they stop doing the things that they usually like to do, and that's an important one. There's often a change in sleep, and it can go either way, too much or too little, but any change in sleep. There may be issues with concentration, memory, even where they start to miss tasks or be late for meetings. There can often be an increase in irritability, where they seem to be like they're on edge. And they're just not acting like themselves. There's been something that's going on with them, and they're just not acting like themselves.
Okay. And I think, as a parent myself, sometimes it's hard to notice in our kids, is this a phase they're going through, or is this something that we need to be paying attention to? And what is it that helps you make that decision?
I'm glad you brought up the parent piece, because parents often miss the signs in their kids. And we know nationally that about 86% of parents who lost a child to suicide didn't even know their kid was depressed. Because as parents, we lose our objectivity. It's hard for us to imagine our child wanting to die. And so it's critical that we recognize the warning signs and that we ask directly. And this isn't just for the kids. This is for everybody, that we're able to say, I've noticed that your grades are dropping, you're not sleeping, you're not hanging out with your friends, and you seem really down, I'm worried about you. Are you suicidal? Or are you thinking of killing yourself? And that's really tough for people. That's one of those last taboos that we don't want to talk about. And there's a myth out there that if you ask about it, you could put the idea in the person's head. There's not 1 ounce of research to support that, not one. On the contrary, asking somebody if they're suicidal validates their pain. It forms a sense of belonging. It reduces isolation. It offers hope. You can do no harm by asking somebody if they're suicidal.
So you've noticed something in your friend and a child and a neighbor and a student. Now what do you do? What does the person do?
You go up there and have the frank conversations. Like, and it always helps to note why you're asking, like I just said, the examples. And I said, and asking, I'm worried about you. Are you suicidal? And the thing about it is, because of the stigma, many times people will say no. Because you might have been the first person that actually expressed what they were thinking. But there may be a resistance at first. Ask it again. If you saw enough of the warning signs to ask it once, ask it again. Offer to take them to help, and that might be an ER, it might be their doctor, it might be a mental health. You may have to, in a lot of remote places in Montana, that might be calling 911.
Sure.
Or we have crisis resources in our state that we really want to promote. And the two primary ones is we have the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that's the 800-273-TALK. And that is a national suicide prevention lifeline, but if you call it from Montana, it goes to either Voices of Hope in Great Falls or the Help Center in Bozeman, 24/7. That's about to change in about a year. They're actually going to change that to a 3-digit number. It's going to be 988.
Wow.
Which is probably going to increase the volume of calls.
Sure.
Especially for young people, though, because we know young people don't like to talk on the phone, but they can text.
Yeah.
We have the crisis text line where they can text MT to 741-741, and a crisis counselor comes back in within about 3 to 5 minutes, and they can initiate active rescue if needed. They can provide crisis counseling. About 80% of the calls in Montana are under the age of 24.
Wow.
And the nice thing is if they're using a phone, we can find the phone. I mean, they have ways of that if in an emergency they can triangulate the call and find the call if needed.
And is that for the person, or is it also for the family member or the friend who's noticed the signs and then now maybe doesn't know what to do?
It could be for both. There's plenty of times that people call and say, I'm worried about my cousin, or I'm worried about my relative who lives in Billings and I'm all the way over in Missoula. We've had people who called about a relative in another state. And if you call, especially the Lifeline, if you call the Lifeline, they're connected to the Lifeline in every state. And so even if you were worried about a relative in Florida, they could connect resources with Florida to help that person. And so it could be for either for the person or if you're concerned about a loved one.
That's amazing to know that there's help out there, and that you said that's available 24/7,
Yes.
so around the clock.
Yes.
That's really important. And then, what about reaching out to a doctor, especially if it's your child, their pediatrician or their primary care physician?
I think that's critical, and that's really the next step that we're taking, because we don't have enough behavioral health providers in our state, but we do have primary care, and there's a push called Zero Suicide or Suicide Safe Care, and they're really, at a national level, they are advocating now for universal screening for depression starting at age 12. We know that depression runs in families. We know anxiety can run in families. There's now some even research suggesting that suicide runs in families. And so it's critical that you share this information with your primary care provider if you have a family history of depression or anxiety, and that they should be universally screening. It should be considered the next vital sign. Your blood pressure, your weight, a depression screen, and it takes just a few minutes to do.
That's, I would have never even thought about talking to my child's primary care physician about our history of any mental health disorders, anxiety or depression. So that's really important.
It's critical.
Wonderful. When we get back, I want to talk a little bit about how the COVID-19 pandemic might be affecting suicide rates in Montana and nationally, and then maybe what communities can do about that. So make sure you stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this with Carl Rustin when we come back.
I was diagnosed with diabetes in 1992, and I went into denial. It made me angry. I was a professional chef, and I didn't want to change my eating style. It took me a long time to get serious about managing my health. My perspective changed from resentment to one of loving my body, the container for my spirit. Getting help from my diabetes educator supported my goals of improved self-care. I want to feel good and have a great life. My diabetes educator helps me do this.
Good care is your right. In Montana, there's over 11,000 beds in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. If you or a family member needs assistance or help in obtaining information about care issues and placement options, call 1-800-332-2272. If you or a family member need information about Montana's long-term care resident rights, or if you need help solving a problem or a complaint about a nursing home or an assisted living facility, call us at 800-332-2272.
If you give or receive care, you already know that it can cause stress on caregiver and receiver alike. The good news is, if you have limited resources, help is available. The Montana Lifespan Respite Program may be able to help you pay for care while you take a break. Even better news is how easy it is to apply. You can get an application online or have one sent to you. We'll get back to you within 5 working days. Respite for caregivers. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. It's okay to get it.
If the Aging Network in Montana was a restaurant, the sign out front would say, over 50 million meals served over the last 30 years. Since adequate nutrition is critical to health and quality of life, nutrition services are an important factor in keeping older Montanans healthy, independent, and living in their community and home. To find out more about senior nutrition programs in your area, call 1-800-551-3191.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we're speaking with Carl Rustin, who's Montana's Suicide Prevention Coordinator. Carl, I think this is a time in history that's kind of unique in its challenges to many, many people. And the COVID-19 pandemic may present a lot of really serious consequences for people as far as suicide goes. What are some of the reasons that this time in history might be something where we see an uptick in suicide?
Sure. We often, it's kind of cliche, but we say that suicide occurs when the pain exceeds the ability to cope. And so we focus a lot on our ability to cope. And for people that are already, whether it's because of an existing mental health condition or socioeconomic or whatever's going on with them, that their ability to cope has already been taxed. You add something like a pandemic where we're all of a sudden we're isolated, we aren't working, things are shut down, we're being disconnected from people. It provides a further tax on our ability to cope, and for many people that could push them into a crisis.
Sure. You know, people working from home, trying to also homeschool kids, being maybe isolated from friends and family members at long distances, all of those could be really, really taxing on people.
Absolutely.
And are we going to see this while people are still isolating at home, or as communities start to open back up? As we open, are we kind of over the hump, or?
I think we have to be prepared for the next wave, and it's not, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be because of the actual virus. I think initially for the past, in March and April, we're all pulling together and in crisis mode where we're ready to respond. But I'm concerned as we start to loosen up and things, communities start to open up, because I think we're going to see a secondary due to socioeconomic, people losing their jobs. I think illness still, and I think that piece, when our crisis mode is kind of kicked out and we're thinking everything's going to go back to normal, and it doesn't. And I think that's when we really have to be aware for people that are struggling with their ability to cope, and just to keep an eye on our friends and our neighbors.
And as friends and neighbors, what does that look like? Is it extra Zoom calls? Is it dropping by flowers? What is it?
It can be isolation. It is just connecting. It's one of the things that we emphasize with primary care is what's called caring contact or follow-up contact. And that's just simple. That's simply saying, when someone has been seen in the doctor's office, to do a follow-up call with the patient, saying, hey, want to see if you're okay? If everything comes up, give us a call. Well, that doesn't have to be in the doctor's office. We teach law enforcement to do it when they work with neighborhoods. We talk to teachers around connecting with kids. But that's the same as being a neighbor. That's noticing the elderly gentleman down the street who now is isolating, isn't taking care of his yard like he usually does, and just going down and saying, hey, how are you doing? If you need anything, let me know. That's just called being a human and being a good neighbor. And that actually has been shown it decreases isolation, it creates a connectedness, and makes people feel like they're part of something.
Returning to being good community members, good neighbors.
Absolutely.
What can communities do as a whole to help be friendly to mental health in general?
I think when people have to understand that, as I mentioned before, suicide isn't a single factor, it's multifactored. And for that same reason, there isn't a single approach. There's multiple approaches that we have to take. I think we have to start with our kids in elementary school. We have programs that are teaching kids resiliency skills and coping skills, the one called the Past Good Behavior Game. So working with your schools around having these programs that are available. Starting to increase awareness around mental health. The average age of onset for depression is about age 15, and for anxiety it's about age 11. So needing to start to work with your pediatrician, your school counselors around early screening. Remember that the national protocols are now universal screening starting at age 12.
Wow.
So working with your pediatricians, working with your schools, there are programs for schools that teach kids the warning signs and how to intervene. There are programs in colleges. There's a great community training called QPR, which just teaches people in any aspect of the community or any part of the community what the warning signs are and how to intervene. So I think raising the awareness of it and for us to start to talk about it. It
Sure.
really requires us to start to address that stigma. That stigma is what stops people from asking for help. And that's really one of the places that we have to change. We have to make it okay to talk about this.
To talk about suicide and then probably mental health in general.
Right, and it's important to understand it's not just suicide. If we just focus our efforts on suicide prevention, we're going to miss the boat. Yeah. Suicide is usually the end result of an undiagnosed, untreated mental health issue, and it's usually depression, and that is the case in the majority. Yet depression is one of the most treatable if we ask for help and you work with your healthcare provider.
And sometimes, that help doesn't necessarily happen on the first time. Sometimes you have to ask again, or maybe you ask for resources again, try different drugs, different programs.
Yes, so, definitely.
Yeah, it's so important to be able to have those conversations, maybe even not just once, but over and over and over again.
Right, and we're really, we're working in our rural communities around, farmers or ranchers are high risk because of foreclosures and economic issues. And so working with your neighbors, working with businesses that work with some of these higher risk groups, I think it really does take a community effort to address this. And we have the resources, we just have to use them.
Absolutely. I just really want to end on making sure we go over those two hotlines one more time, just so that people have that information as the last thing they hear from us.
Sure. So the one that's available to anybody who has a phone is the 800-273-TALK. That's 8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And as I mentioned, if you call it from Montana, it goes to either Voices of Hope in Great Falls or the Help Center in Bozeman. There's a vet option on that. If you're a veteran, you can hit 1, it connects you to the VA crisis line.
Okay.
So that is a resource that's available. That is going to be changing. It's going to be easier to use in about a year when they change it to 988. But there's also the text option. You can text MT to 741-741, and a crisis counselor comes back in within 3 to 5 minutes and starts an interactive conversation, and they can initiate active rescue if needed.
And those are real people. It's not, You're not talking to a robot.
No, those are real people that, especially for the Lifeline, those are people in our state, community members that work with the Lifeline.
And that's for family members and people who are experiencing mental health crisis.
Yeah, if it's for yourself, of course, but maybe you're with a friend, you don't know what to do, and you can call them and they will help guide you. They can bring resources to you, or they can walk you through about how best to help your friend or family member.
Well, Carl, I just really want to thank you for being here and for everything that you're doing for communities all across the state. Bringing this issue into the light is so important for Montana and Montana's future. So
thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here today, and thank you for joining us on Aging Horizons today with Carl Rustin.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.